Hey band, choir, and orchestra directors, it's Jill, and we are still in our Teaching the Ballot series for festival or contest for musical ensembles. Today we're going to be talking about the category for musicianship or interpretation or something similar. Depending on your state or regional ballot, sometimes this category will include things like articulation or balance or a couple other things that we've already discussed. If you have missed those videos, make sure you go back and check them out, but sometimes they don't. So today in this video for interpretation, we're mostly going to be focusing on things like dynamics and phrasing. Now, most groups, by the time that they're going to a festival, oftentimes in their second year or beyond, are going to have a good understanding of what dynamics are, at least as far as loud and soft goes. So I like to focus my discussion with them on what musical phrasing is, how it relates to our spoken or written phrasing, and in terms of things like what do we stress, what is kind of leading away from somewhere versus winding down a sentence or a musical phrase. And the first practical thing that I like to do in my rehearsals is, especially during warm-ups, start to experiment with musical phrasing and dynamics in those warm-ups. So for example, if we're doing scale warm-ups, then we start to play with, what if we crescendo here? What if we decrescendo here? What if we do a terrace dynamic in the middle? What happens and how does that change the sound of the music? Or during long tones, we will experiment with different types of cutoffs sometimes, like what if we do a crescendo and then a big push right before the cutoff? Or what if we wind it down to niente? And do a lot of those kind of little experiments so that students can sort of grasp the feel of the phrase. Particularly for wind players and singers, it'll be important to grasp the feeling of what it feels like physically to use all of the air that you have and try to maintain that control until the end of things. So when we're working on long tones, that's what we'll do, is try to make sure we're getting good breaths, going back to our tone exercises and making sure that we are controlling our air until the end of the phrase. Then when I'm hopping into the literature that I'm working on for that contest or festival, I try to look for, in each piece, what are my most emotional climactic moments and what are my most quiet and reflective moments. And then try to bring out the contrast in both of those. They're both equally important. Then once we have sort of refined those very climactic and very reflective moments, we start to think about the larger picture. So where is the music taking us? Are we going toward somewhere or are we moving away from somewhere? And thinking about that larger phrase of where's our momentum coming from? And I would say with my students, this is the category where I tend to ask the kids the most questions, such as, where's the peak of the melody? How can the accompaniment support that melody? What's the climax of this? What's not already marked in that we can do here? What should be the most stress note? What should be the least stress note? Those kids will be sick of me asking them questions by the time we get done with this week on musicianship. And the thing that I stress to them the most during this is that there's often not necessarily a correct answer to all my questions, and that it's up to us to interpret what we think might be the best. And that even professional orchestras and choirs will have different recordings of different masterworks because they interpret them differently. So they're two incredible groups, but they're going to interpret something differently because that's just the fun of music. So during this period of your festival literature study, don't be afraid to experiment. And if you play something one way and you don't like it and the kids are like, nah, that didn't sound good, don't be afraid to try it a different way, because that is what this interpretation category is all about. What your judges will be looking for is that you have made good decisions and that you have applied them as a group and as a whole, working toward that goal of interpretation together. That's it for today's tip on musicianship and interpretation, and make sure you give us a like and a follow. We are winding down this ballot series. We have one video left next week, which is going to be on the dreaded other performance factors. So make sure you give us a like and a follow so you can join us again next week for that one. Catch you next time.